In my opinion, the beauty of handmade things is that they're perfectly imperfect, right? So there's always a trace that it's done by hand. You look at it under a microscope, it's like, oh, okay, that's slightly crooked, and that's okay. There's a warmth to something that was made by another human being. And that's drastically different in quantifiable ways from what is ever spit out by a factory.
Today, it is my great pleasure to be sitting down with the founder and creative director of L'Arte Nascosta, Salvatore Ambrosino. What's up, man?
Pleasure to be here. Not much, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you. We are located in the humble abode of the Armoury today on 69th Street. As you guys can see, we have some watches on the table and some cool accessories here, and we'll definitely dive deep into all things L'Arte Nascosta. You have a very interesting connection to watches. How did that whole world start for you?
Rewind to before I was even born. My mom got my dad a grandfather clock as their first wedding anniversary gift. And this clock ran fast or slow or not accurately. So my dad, being who he is, picked up a book and started to figure out how a clock worked. Before long, he picked up his own lathe, his own milling machine, his own tooling, and on the weekends he would repair antique clocks for people in the local neighborhood. And that's where my mom would stick me to when she was doing whatever housework or whatever she needed to get done. She would stick me in the basement or my dad's workshop while he repaired clocks. I would sit there and hammer away at some broken mechanism or something. So the idea of working with your hands to make something that was beautiful was something I was exposed to at a very early age, to the point where the first word that I ever spoke was clock. I should actually ask them how much longer it took me to actually say mom or dad, you know?
So these two Omegas that you have here, those were your father's?
Yeah, these were actually my grandfather's to start with, who then gave them to my dad, which is pretty cool. So this is a mid-50s Omega Constellation pan dial. And this is an early 60s Omega Seamaster DeVille, which we since have had refurbished by Omega. And they insisted on refinishing the dial. But if you look very closely, you notice that this lug is kind of crooked because that was one of my dad's own repair jobs. And then the back of the case back is dented for some reason or another. And those little kind of details make the watch for me. Yeah, so these were the two watches that we were basically doing some straightening up in the house, and I empty the sock drawer, and these two watches come tumbling out. And that was just happened to be the time where I began reading about watches. And, the design of the Seamaster in particular is so, I would even say ubiquitous at this point. So many brands have done some iteration of that exact dial that it's such a mid-century classic. And the Constellation I also really love just because how structural it is. The raised indices, the three-dimensionality of the pie pan dial, it's just always interesting to look at, So yeah, these are two great watches that I feel very lucky to have, especially because of the family's history that they share,
And then moving on here, you have a field watch here.
Yeah, so this is my first watch. That's not a kiddie watch. And yeah, it's a field watch because as a little kid, I was completely obsessed with anything related to the military. And there was a TV show called Tour of Duty. And my favorite character of the show was the sergeant of this company, and he wore his, which I guess would have been a Hamilton field watch. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And I really, really wanted one. And one year for Christmas, my parents got me this. And what was funny is that my field watch was hidden in the pocket of a Vietnam era Alice pack. And it's still the same Alice pack I use to this day when I travel, because I don't know if there's anything better to travel with. And so I wore it to play Army in the backyard all the time. And later on, I wore it all throughout high school, throughout college. I've worn this watch quite a bit, and I still do wear it.
I love how this watch has this utilitarian feel about it, and I feel like it's kind of a marriage of high and low, making something that is useful but beautiful in a way.
Yeah, actually, a friend of mine was really, really kind to say that the designs we come up with are opulent, but at the same time not fussy. And I couldn't have said it better myself. That's really what we go for. Just of my personality, the way I am, the way I like to dress and present myself, what appeals to me is just not to be too fussy, like to be lived in a little bit. Like I like it when my blazer's kind of slouchy. I like it when my shoes are kind of beaten up. It just feels a little more approachable. And so with L'Arte Nascosta, the business that I founded, we work with extraordinarily qualified artisans who are certainly capable of making beautiful objects that are to the level of what you'd find in a museum. What we work on together is in a way to kind of, I'll share some of my own ideas for different products that we might make, and I like to channel that skill set that they have into something that's approachable and relatable to everyday wearing. So in a sense, what you say is true. It's kind of like a well-crafted field watch in a way.
Right.
This is just a quartz Cabela's private label field watch.
Yeah.
So there are probably better examples out there, but it's certainly the ethos of this watch in the sense that it's something that's very wearable, very relatable, is very much in line with what we do with L'Arte Nascosta.
What does that translate to?
L'Arte Nascosta translates to the hidden art in Italian. So the mission of the company is really to reawaken the inner patron of the arts that I believe is kind of latent within us all. We do a lot of engraving, we do a lot of custom finishing and custom embellishments on the jewelry and personal accessories that we make. The inspiration for the business came from meeting a goldsmith in Florence named Paolo Fenco. Paolo specializes in Renaissance techniques of goldsmithing. And he's particularly famous for recreating historical references that you'll find on paintings of the Grand Masters. And throughout that time when I was studying for my master's degree, through various avenues, I came to realize that in Italy there was a similar problem to what we had in the United States in terms of the survival of many artisans' workshops. And so the mission of the company became to close that information gap between a potential patron of the arts and supremely qualified artisans in Italy. And so that's how we got started in January of 2020. This is pre-pandemic, and actually it was when the Armoury was just about to open their shop around the corner. This was before this shop opened. They were just doing an extended pop-up at what they called their Westbury location on Madison Avenue. And I sat down with Mark Cho, who I had become friendly with over the years. And I told him, like, Mark, this is I think I'm going to make a go of this and make it into my business. And he was so encouraging and even offered to host me for like my first kind of like foray into this at the Westbury shop. And we were able to do that for a whole of 2 days before we had to shut down because of the lockdown. But so Mark was really always a huge supporter and a mentor in many ways. It feels very appropriate to be doing a video like this at the Armoury when we have both L'Arte Nascosta and the Armoury have gotten through that baptism of fire of COVID and lockdowns and everything. And then we're here on the other side and can look back on it and laugh.
What makes something that's handmade special?
In my opinion, the beauty of handmade things is that they're perfectly imperfect. There's always a trace that it's done by hand. You look at it under a microscope, it's like, oh, okay, that's slightly crooked. And that's okay, because really, we don't need things to be kind of like NASA level precise, unless it's a watch mechanism. And I think at a very fundamental level, in the same way that it's kind of satisfying to stand under a tree, or it's satisfying to look at a campfire, it hits us at a very intuitive, kind of fundamental human level that there's a warmth to something that was made by another human being. And there's an additional layer to that warmth when you know that what that other human being, whose hand you can shake, who you can speak to, whose life story you can get to know, what that person made for you has a little bit of your own expression in it. The object that results from this collaboration or this patron-artisan relationship is the fruit of exactly that, a relationship. And that's drastically different in quantifiable ways from what is ever spit out by a factory.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like, again, that's a reflection of some of the pieces that you have here on the table, right? You brought this really cool vintage trench watch, right? Again, too, I think just in general, like something as vintage, it is imperfect, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot of different menswear references. I want to talk about the Speedmaster next, because I had recalled you saying that a nice outfit or a nice suit can be complemented more by a nice watch, right?
The Speedmaster, this was at the time kind of when Tumblr was still a big thing.
Okay.
At the time, there were a lot of pictures of, men with great style that tended to be kind of like Italian senior citizens looking back on it, but they just had their style really dialed in. It was great inspiration, and really beautiful watches. And knew that there were two watches with black dials that I really, really, really liked. And one was the Submariner, and the other was the Omega Speedmaster. I was at my first job out of graduate school at the Italian Chamber of Commerce in New York. And so it really wasn't that too far of a leap for me to go during my lunch break and stop in the Omega boutique. I try on this watch, and it wasn't this one, it was the actual moon watch, right?
Yeah.
And I go home and start looking at the website. I saw this one, which had these perfectly symmetrical subdials, which totally, it sounds ridiculous, but I was like smitten by this watch. Speak to my dad about it, and my dad brought something to my attention that I hadn't realized before. All the clocks that I was raised with had a moon phase complication on them.
Interesting.
And, between the aesthetic of the perfectly symmetrical subdials and the fact that all the clocks in my dad's collection had moon phase, the fact that this was an Omega, so kind of like a continuation of the trend that my grandfather kind of started, the decision was made for me.
Yeah,
it was perfect.
exactly.
So it came to me in a certain sense, yeah. The watches that come into my collection, they come into the collection, really. This watch came in that way. Right. So this Tudor that I'm wearing today, I wasn't shopping for a watch, but there's a series of circumstances that just kind of led me to say, like, this is the time to buy that watch. Yeah. And it can't be any other watch right now. It's got to be that watch.
Yeah, meant to be.
Yeah, it was meant to be, yeah.
So for this Speedmaster, can you explain to me the details?
Yeah, so this is a alligator strap that was made in Rome by one of the leathersmiths that we collaborate with, named Dino Ciani. So I just asked for the edging to be painted in the same kind of green, forest green color. And then the actual buckle itself is hand engraved by another artisan I collaborate with in Rome named Jesus Serrato. And so the first product that we launched together were these hand-engraved watch buckles. These can be tricky because it's a watch buckle, so there's not too much room to work with. So it's really a testament as well to Jesus's talent and skill as an engraver to capture so much detail in such a really tiny space.
And then tying in your love for military design and military inspiration, this right here, this necklace harkens back to that, right? Like the dog chain type of look.
What's interesting is that in the 1950s and 1960s, in surfing culture, these guys would wear their dad's old military medals and whatever trophies that they brought back from the war. These dog tag chains became basically like a charm necklace where you'd throw on like just different like charms and trinkets that you came across on your adventures of life. I thought, what a cool thing to kind of adopt the same idea and create our own version of that chain. That can be a kind of a library of these charms that you collect, of these stories that you collect, and that you choose to share using some sort of visual symbolism.
Amazing. Much like watches,
Much like watches, yeah, true, yeah.
What is it like seeing something from ideation to creation? Like, what is that feeling like when you finally get to present something to a client?
Yeah, it's a great feeling.
Yeah.
It really is, because every single time that a customer comes with an idea for a new commission, every single time it's a test. It's important to me that I do my due diligence and find something that really strikes a chord with what they're trying to express. And so when that happens, that is, like, to me, the most important thing. So, like, yeah, the object is beautiful. Yeah. They're excited to wear the object. Like, it's a new accessory to wear. It's something that they waited for a while for. But it's like kind of like intangible. Again, like the intuition comes into it again. Like you feel when that kind of like strikes a chord, and you see it in the person's eye, and that's my favorite part.
I love how your approach. It's like a delayed. How do you say this, right?
Like a delayed satisfaction.
Yeah, or delayed like gratification.
Like a slow burn.
Yeah, like delayed gratification, right?
Yeah. Working with multiple artisans that have, each one has their workshop set up in a different way. Is it efficient? No, there's nothing efficient about artisan production. But that's the only way you make stuff like this. You know what I mean? So it's, I guess it's a price that you pay. I wanted to have this pen engraved, and it took a while. I think I left the pen with Jesus last summer.
Yeah.
And it took me like 3 months to figure out what I wanted the design to be. And then it took him another like 2.5 months before he could start engraving it. And it's okay because I'm not dying without it. And distance makes the heart grow fonder. And longer production time makes the delivery that much more exciting.
Right. Now, the final watch that we have on the table kind of brings it full circle.
So this is a Tudor Black Bay 54, which we both agree is a great watch. This one in particular is one of the special editions released with the Armoury. To backtrack a little bit, I said earlier that my entire business is predicated on the fact that I noticed that there was this information gap. And I realized, like, I'm not in the business of selling things, really, like selling objects. I'm in the business of kind of sharing stories. And so speaking to a good friend of mine in Florence about this, he's an antique dealer and a tour guide, Francesco, who you met.
Right.
We realized that we had complementary skill sets to offer fully immersive experiences that kind of convey a very particular perspective of what we think is the best part about Italy. And artisanship is a major feature of that. And very much in the same way that when I spoke to Mark and told him that I was launching L'Arte Nascosta early 2020, I met up with him again and we were sharing a cigar and I said, I had this idea for a tourism component of the business to complement what we do with custom products. And what do you think about it? He's like, oh, that's a great idea. You should absolutely go for it and everything. I was like, Mark, what do you think if we were to do a tour together, like something we could offer your customers? We can curate an experience that fits into the Armoury's DNA. We took a couple of their clients from Hong Kong and New York over to Tuscany. We were talking about watches basically in every car ride throughout this trip. And so at one point, one of the guests asked me what would be the next watch I was going to pick up. I was like, it's new businesses. I don't know. I'm not really in the position to splurge on a watch right now, but if it were to be a watch, it would be the Black Bay 54. And Mark was sitting a row or two in front of me and he turns around and he's like, oh, really? He didn't explain and he texted me a picture of the rendering of this watch. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like a Tudor, like the Armoury with Tudor? I was like, yeah, we're doing a small collaboration. Hey, if you're interested, I could allocate one for you. Like, I was not in the market to buy a watch. Probably not the most responsible choice I can make at the time, but you know what? There's a time when these things just kind of come to you. And that was a very meaningful trip for me because it was proof of concept that these tours are the right path for us to continue in that kind of storytelling mission of L'Arte Nascosta. To do something like that with a friend who's always been kind of a role model for me was, I don't know, it's just like so much meaning packed up into one thing. I just simply could not let the opportunity pass me by. And so, grabbed the watch, and I honestly, and I'm not saying this to I don't know, because you like the things you're supposed to say. I really haven't taken it off my wrist since I've gotten it. Couldn't be happier that I was able to get it.
Yeah, and again, just to bring it back to L'Arte, I don't know if you had envisioned it to be where it's at right now. Is it like up to par? Like, are you surprised by where you're at?
So given the lack of market analysis I did, I'm very surprised at how much potential, like untapped potential there is in this world. Where L'Arte Nascosta is now, it really has a firm grasp on two areas that every luxury brand kind of pursues. And that's one is personalization and the other is experience. And so I'm very enthusiastic about what the future holds for the brand.
Yeah, of course.
It's a very, very, very small team. So my only insecurities lie in will we be able to manage the growing interest that this brand is kind of coming across in New York and the rest of the world. And there's only one answer, which is it has to be.
Right.
It has to be able to sustain it because there's no there's no backing out of it. So very enthusiastic and optimistic.
Thank you, Sal, for your time. And again, we're just truly excited to see where this brand goes. And thank you for taking the time to bring these watches and to share all these stories. We'll leave all your info down below. And of course, thanks again.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, cheers.
My pleasure.
Yeah.